Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. The dark web is a place where you can buy damn near anything for the right amount of Bitcoin. From things like the obvious, drugs, hacking tools, personal information on people you want to stalk, all the way to things that are much more obscure. Things like exotic pets, hitman services, though most of those are honeypots, and illegally obtained weapons. Most of the time, when thinking about buying things on the dark web, it's best not to think too much on what you're looking at. Take it at face value and don't ask questions. You don't want to know where the hell those guys got the block of drugs or the handgun that you just purchased. Because odds are, when you get to the end of that rabbit hole, you're going to find that someone is either dead, injured, missing, or being looked for by federal agents. My point is, you really don't need to be on the dark web unless you plan to break the law in some way, shape, or form. That said, there is one service that I found on the dark web that actually made me think about it and what could have or could be happening. For a bit of backstory, I spend a lot of my personal time on the internet. I do a lot of contractor IT work for larger companies, mostly data security and security analysis for medium-sized corporations. One of my secondary jobs in my cybersecurity work is what's known as threat hunting. A threat hunter is someone that goes out onto the deep and dark web and tries to find pages that are selling vulnerability information for websites or technologies. Basically, they go and see if a company's information is available to hackers or if they're using technologies that are being actively exploited. This doesn't have anything to do with my story, but it gives you an idea of who I am and what I do for a living, and it helps to explain why I was out on the dark web. Now, because I had to find this data on the dark web, typically information that was for sale, I had to get in with the people selling the info and had to purchase it when necessary. They were legitimate sales on the dark web. Yes, this is a gray area, and yes, there can be issues with doing this, but a lot of the time, it was critical for what I was doing for these organizations. Because of this, I spent a lot of time on sites that were built to sell illegal content. And this ties back to how I started this story. The site that sells illegal content, items, and services. Typically, you see these things and you just understand that they exist and move on. However, there was one site that had something that made me legitimately terrified, mostly because it had two services that were sickeningly tied together. The first service that I saw was one that was unfortunately fairly common, which is escorts. A lot of the time, these escorts on the dark web are not willing participants. They are, more often than not, victims of human trafficking. That alone is sickening and terrible. But the next part made it worse. The website had a service dedicated to assisting immigrants. On its face, that may not sound like much, but put it into context with the other side of that. It's incredibly likely that a lot of these immigrants that they were helping were dragged into the human trafficking side as well. Think about it. People entering a foreign country, possibly alone and desperate, most likely not able to keep in touch with their family back home. And it's likely that no one knows where they're going to end up. I just kind of sat there and thought about it for a few moments, and it really got to me. The thoughts that someone from another country that may be looking to get away from an oppressive government or away from something like the cartel could end up finding its way out. I could imagine they would do so much to scrape together the money just to pay these people that say that would help them, and then they end up being trafficked and sold out as an escort. I know, this isn't your normal story, and I apologize if it's a bit strange in context, but it's something that I found on the dark web that actually scared me. And while it was really on an implication and not confirmation, it's one of those things that, when you know how these illegal networks work, it becomes clear what's happening.
Please stay away from the dark web. Posted by u/anti1venom11. Just some insight about me. I'm a 19-year-old male with a decent body build from Florida. I live in a rural area where my house is surrounded by trees, and it's a long way from here to the bus stop. I usually jog on my way there and take the bus to my university because I didn't have enough to afford housing there. I was late to class by about 5 minutes. I took my seat, started to prepare my notes, and listened to the professor. I was opening a book when I heard a group of students talking about how there is some horrible stuff on the internet and that one had ordered some weed and LSD. I was interested in what they were talking about, but not about the weed, about how there is other stuff that cannot be found with your typical search engine. Just as class was about to end, I heard one of them saying how his buddy should download the search engine called Tor. His friend complied, said they'd meet later and that they have other classes to attend. They parted ways and I was entirely intrigued about this Tor browser. I finally finished my classes for the day and started to head home. I had to take my usual route, jog to the bus stop, take the bus to the closest station to my house, and I jogged the rest of the way back. I entered my house and ran to my room, curious on what they were talking about. I turned on my computer and directly searched Tor browser and installed it. Before I went on it, I did some research about it and if it was best if I installed a VPN to keep my IP hidden. I also stumbled upon how that is where the deep web lies, and that is a place that no one should visit. My curiosity got the best of me and decided to proceed. I turned on the VPN, launched Tor, and found some links. I went to each of them. They were the typical drugstore, government secrets, and your average firearms dealer. But that's when I opened the link, which led me to a blank site. There was nothing in the page until the words popped up. If you are not familiar with this site, leave. If you were led here, please proceed. And the buttons, leave and proceed, popped up on the screen. I thought to myself, what could go wrong? And curiosity once again got the best of me. I clicked on proceed and a small chat box popped up. There was a single admin and about 11 other viewers. I decided not to type, wait, and watch what this was all about. Just as I looked away, a video popped up. It was a man whose arms and legs were nailed all the way through to keep him in place. There was blood pouring from the places he was nailed. I felt a bit sick and thought that this was just a cleverly edited video. The man's face was completely blank. Suddenly, a door in the background opened slowly. What popped up was a man with a mask that left me speechless. It was the exact same face of the guy nailed to the chair. Expressionless. Blank. I felt sick and decided to leave, but the exit button was nowhere to be found. These freaks disabled my close button. Then, what I saw next in the chat made my stomach drop. Wanting to leave so soon? I thought to myself, how did he know I wanted to leave? He posted a picture of me in the chat. I immediately threatened to call the cops, and that was the worst decision of my life. He then threatened to come over to my house and kidnap me, or that he would slit my throat if I tried to resist. He then proceeded to type my full name, address, where I'm studying, and where my other family members live. The chat then told the man in the mask to show me what he would do to me if he came to my house. He started to run his knife through the helpless man's neck and began to remove body parts, just like a butcher cutting up some meat. I quickly removed the power cable of the computer, took it out, and destroyed the computer so he couldn't reach me. I thought to myself, how on earth was he able to find my name and where I live if I had a VPN on? I then felt a buzz in my pocket. My phone was ringing. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and saw a blank caller ID. I immediately hung up, and what came next was gut-wrenching. He sent me a text saying, "You're next," and I thought this was just some bull. I keep a 9mm handgun concealed in my house, just in case of robbery. I couldn't sleep through the night, thinking that someone was watching me, ready to make their move. Luckily, I fell asleep and nothing much happened that night. I woke up, did my typical routine, and headed to university. I always lock all my doors and windows in my house, and I don't usually forget to do so. It was just a regular day. I took all my classes and heard those other boys from yesterday saying the stuff they did in the deep web. I went home exhausted since I barely got any sleep because of what happened last night. Walking to the doorstep, I felt that something was off, but decided to shrug it off. I tried unlocking the door, but it wouldn't budge. That's when I realized it. The door wouldn't unlock because it was already unlocked. I shrugged it off, thinking I just forgot to lock it since I didn't get any sleep last night. I walked in, then locked the door behind me. I felt like someone was watching me. You know when you can feel someone stare? Yeah, that's exactly what I felt. I go around the house, looking in closets, corners, you name it, but nothing was there. I thought to myself that it was just due to a lack of sleep. I go to take a quick shower and head to bed. Once I doze off, I was awoken 6 hours later to the sound of a crack and a bump. It came from the bathroom. I was thinking it could be the weirdo from the deep web. But I thought to myself, no way, I locked all the doors and windows. If someone opened a door or a window, I would have instantly woken up since they are loud and I'm a light sleeper. I went to check on it, and it was written on the mirror. Large, capital letters, with a deep red color. It had the texture of that like blood. It said, "Look outside." I immediately looked outside my window and saw a large, dark figure standing by a tree. That's when it hit me. 2 other shadowy figures popped up from another tree. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 as fast as I can, while running down making sure every door was locked. I looked outside again when I saw another 4 dark figures popping up from the trees. There was a total of 7 men outside, hiding within the trees. The 911 operator finally picked up and asked what my emergency was. This is how it went. 911, what's your emergency? Get the cops over. There are 7 men outside my house, walking closer every second. What's so suspicious of these men? They are freaking holding butcher knives. Okay, what's your address? 1428 Elm Street. I stumbled in the house, running like a maniac, remembering that I kept my 9mm concealed inside. I go, grab the gun, and I hear an extremely loud bang outside my door. I go look through the peephole, and it was just one of them. He shouted with his deep voice, "Open up!" I told him that I had already called the cops and that I was armed. That's when I lost all hope of security and safety. I heard 6 windows being smashed and the men jumping through, making a loud thud after hopping in. I instantly thought that my best chance of survival was to run to the bathroom and lock myself in. I heard the men slowly walking up the stairs, making a creaking sound after every step. That's when it all went down. I thought that if I were to go, I wouldn't go without a fight. I start screaming once more that I was armed, and if they came through the door, I would open fire. That's when relief struck me like a rock. I saw the blue and red lights outside the bathroom window, with their sirens blasting as loud as it could. The men instantly ran downstairs and jumped out of the window they had broken, running straight for the woods behind the house. The police saw the men running into the woods and sent a couple of officers with canines chasing the men. The rest came in the house, looking for me, concerned for my safety. Luckily, I was still alive, just a few scratches and bruises from clumsily running around my house, looking for a stop to increase my chance of survival. After that, the cops offered me a place to stay in some crappy motel, just so I wouldn't have to stay in my house. Immediately after that day, I got rid of all my belongings and moved out of state. I now live in California, basically a new life, I would say. I have never had to go through that again, and I've never saw those men or anyone stalking me since I left Florida. So, to those dark web chat room freaks, I hope we never meet again.
I have a story that actually got me off the deep and dark web altogether. I actually didn't know much about everything. I was aware of what Tor was, all the encryption stuff and whatnot, but I really wasn't very well versed in what exactly made the deep and dark web different from the surface web. Well, I knew the dark web was illegal stuff, but I was curious how it was able to exist, how things worked, why the cops hadn't taken it down, and so forth and so on. It was a bit of a weird, ignorant view of things, but as time went on and I educated myself, I started to understand how encryption and anonymity worked. And fortunately, as I learned, I found myself feeling more confident. I started out as just looking around at things. Then I started commenting on forums. Then, I moved on to actually communicating with the people instead of just making mindless comments. I kind of felt at home in a few of the communities, and it was nice to kind of live amongst a bunch of people all over the world and just talk about random things that had no real bearing on everyday life. It was almost my escape from reality, which isn't something that a lot of people can say. Well, as I quickly learned, the deep web isn't all rainbows and unicorns. Actually, I don't think it's rainbows and unicorns at all. I just got in with decent people. And as I was pursuing my usual forum, I found a post by someone that I had spoken with a few times, and I thought they were pretty cool. The forum post said something to the effect of, "Message me for an invite to the Red Friday party." I was all about parties, and again, I was comfortable with these people, so I figured it would be a good time just hanging out online with some anonymous people from the internet, chatting about nothing in particular. But what I got, however, was not a party. Now, I'm sure you can see where this is going. I can hear you probably thinking, "But OP, red rooms don't really exist." And I can tell that, while they don't really exist as an easy-to-access node on the dark web, at least one does exist, and it's shared very privately. This Red Friday party was set up to look like a basic live stream, a camera, some dimmed out red lights, and a girl that was in front of the camera. She looked fairly normal. She didn't look upset or terrified or anything, and she was reading chat pretty nonchalantly. At first, I thought this was going to be one of those just chatting streams or whatever. People were asking her questions about herself, and she would answer shyly. Most of the questions were pretty normal, and a few were a bit sexual and direct, but she would avoid them. And after watching her just describe her everyday life for a few minutes, I noticed a timer on the top of the screen that was counting down and was a couple minutes away from 0. I waited for it to count down, and when it did, there was a ringing noise and a guy's voice came on from off screen. He said something to the effect of, "All right, chat time is up. Now, we will go into donation request only. Get your coins ready, because it's going to be a blast." I could see the look on her face shift from shy to straight up nervous. She said something like, "I don't want to do this." And the other voice very firmly and loudly said, "You stole from me, and these guys are going to pay your debt. You do what they say until we're square, or things are going to go south really fast." You know the saying, it's like a train wreck and you can't look away. That's how this was with me. I wanted to close this out and never think about it ever again. But part of me just had to watch. The whole thing started mundane. People donated small amounts of Bitcoin for stupid things. Put a shoe on your head, show us your feet, try to lick your elbow. Honestly, stupid stuff. And it wasn't that bad for the first few minutes. But then the higher amount started to pour in for other things. They were telling her to take her clothes off, do other things that I won't mention, and she was visibly distraught the whole time, but she complied. And as bad as that was, I didn't expect the next part. One person chimed in with 2 Bitcoin, which was a lot of money at that time, and told her to cut her cheek with a knife. She shook her head no and said that she couldn't do that, but the man chimed in again, said to do it, and handed her a small pocket knife. She started to sob and quickly sliced her cheek, causing herself to bleed. Then there was another donation for several more Bitcoin that said, "Cut a finger off." She was already sobbing at this point and yelling no, saying that she was done and that she wanted to leave. He started yelling, grabbed her hand, and did it for her. This was mortifying, obviously, but the last part got worse. There were people donating dozens of Bitcoin to the stream, and the things they wanted were sick. Then one chimed in with a 50 Bitcoin donation that said, "I'm bored. Get rid of her." This was then matched by a number of other people donating similar amounts and echoing the exact same sentiment. I just sat there for a moment, watching her scream and cry, begging for her life, and then watching a man walk into the scene of the camera with what looked like a machete. I did not continue watching, and I will say that the thought of all of this made me physically ill. I literally threw up in the trash can by my desk. That was seriously the worst thing that I have ever seen, and it completely made me swear off anything beyond the surface web. Hell, since then, I've been nearly scared to use a computer and do anything beyond use Facebook or surf the front page of Reddit. I have no idea if what I saw was real, or a pre-recorded snuff like horror movie, or if it was a legit Red Room style party. I don't know if the chat was real or pre-recorded, but part of me tells me that she was being held hostage and what I saw actually happened. While Red Rooms may not really be a big thing, something akin to them does exist, and I highly recommend never ever go to a dark web live stream just in case. I have a fairly short story about a personal experience that I had on the dark web. And honestly, it's actually more so a weird story than it is creepy. There's absolutely a creepy aspect to it, no doubt about that, but for the most part, it was pretty much just one of those things that you look at, get a bit curious about, and then move on with your life from there. Well, that's what I did anyway. So obviously, I'm a deep web user. I like to hit up a bunch of random pages that exist out there. Some are pretty tame. Some of them could probably coexist alongside pages like Facebook and Reddit. but I also like to spend some of my time on sites that a lot of people would consider to be detestable, or some other adjective like that. No, I don't really spend time on illegal or gross or any content like that, but I like what I like, and really, it's just a few pages that may be morally in a gray area. And no, I'm not going to name the pages. I'm just going to say that I'm an adult and I can do what I want. Let's just leave it at that. I'm trying to over-justify this and I shouldn't. One of the pages that I like to go on is a bit of a marketplace where you can buy odds and ends and the occasional oddity. There have been a lot of things that I wanted to spend money on, but then couldn't justify. Things like vials of blood from certain celebrities that are into Scientology, various bootleg DVDs of early cuts of movies, and there was even a book one time that was supposedly signed by Charles Manson. But it was a certain book that I wouldn't be caught dead owning. So, as cool as having Manson's signature would be to me, I just kind of moved on and accepted that it was something that I would never own. Now, as most of you know, there's a certain niche on the dark web for illegal items. Things like the aforementioned bootleg DVDs, stolen movie scripts, drugs of course. And there is a lot that you can buy on the dark web that you really shouldn't. One thing you don't usually expect to find, accessories, like personal accessories. There was one page on the market that I found that sold things like wallets, shoes, watches, and they even had what they stated to be exotic leathers available. My curiosity definitely got its grip on me, and I started looking through their wares, and I was shocked at what they claimed to have. The first thing I saw was a ton of leather made of alligator skin. Not terribly crazy, there's certainly a market that exists on the surface for it. Then, I clicked through and they claimed to have camel leather shoes available, which I thought was cool, but again, not terribly weird if you live in a place where camels are common. Then, I saw the weird stuff. Cat leather watches, dog leather wallets. It actually started to make me feel a bit disgusted thinking of someone's pet being turned into an accessory. Then, I saw dolphin leather, and that, I'm pretty sure is illegal to use. And then finally, there was a small section on the store dedicated to human leather. You heard that right. Leather made of human skin. They promised it was durable and that it was well worth the extra money it cost to source it. There was even a customization section where you could choose the ethnicity of the product if you wanted to change it up. Again, my imagination kind of took over and I started thinking about who the hell was buying the stuff. But with the process they would have to go through, with the amount of money they were charging, there had to be a market, right? Anyways, like I said, that was my story, and I know it was weirder than creepy. It's pretty sickening that it exists, and honestly, I think I'll stick with my crappy leather and Velcro wallet. And here are the top comments for my last video. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.